All right, hi everyone. Welcome to Coach's Corner. I'm here with Charlie Athanassiou. I hope I got that right, Charlie. We have known each other for about a decade
You
now.
did.
I hope I nailed that. Excellent. Good to hear. Charlie is
You got it right.
the second in charge down at Melbourne Strength Culture, the head of strength and powerlifting coaching. And tonight we're going to talk about the art of coaching. So tonight we're going back to a little more of an open floor kind of style. So Charlie, first off, can you kick us off with just a little brief introduction to, I guess, your training as well? Because I think that you, as a coach, you learn best from doing what you actually, doing what you're actually preaching. So we'll hear about, we'll hear about
Which is
your
probably going to
training
be some
and
of
then
my
your.
advice tonight for. Yeah, crazy. So for those, there's obviously a few faces I recognise in the group here, but for those who don't know me, I'm the head of powerlifting at Melbourne Strength Culture. Started Melbourne Strength Culture with Jamie 4 years ago. Yeah, just over 4 years. We had our fourth birthday in lockdown. And before that, I worked at Sweatmaster, just a little studio in Hampton, doing some PT work. Before that, just getting some experience. Jamie also worked at that same studio longer than me. We both went to high school together. So that's how we know each other. I don't know if some people don't know that. But so then, we started Melbourne Strength Culture, got more experience coaching, and sort of did my first powerlifting comp. So I actually got asked this question last week by one of my clients about lifting being a hobby, but then also trying to make it work. And I sort of fell into it backwards, where it was already something I was doing as work. And then I started to realize, hang on, I actually really like this lifting heavy thing. Did my first powerlifting comp, and then just proceeded to keep doing powerlifting comps. And now I've been doing competitive powerlifting for about 4 years. Was about to compete at the first my first nationals this year, but unfortunately with what we're experiencing in Melbourne, that is not going ahead. And so sort of the way that the gym runs, we've sort of all got our own little niche where I take most of the powerlifting clients. Probably about 80% of my clients are doing comps in some way, shape or form and competing. I do have a small margin of a small population of general population clients that are just looking to get stronger and more jacked. But so we've sort of all got our little niches at Strength Culture, and that's where I've sort of fallen into. And then, so we were looking for a big year this year within our powerlifting team, junior nationals and nationals, but unfortunately that has all been put on hold with what we're experiencing. So that's an introduction to me and what I sort of do as a coach.
So in that process, you say you've been competitively powerlifting for 4 years now. When in that process did you hire your first coach? Even though that you kind of knew what you were doing, you've been PTing for 5-6 years already. But when did you go, now it's time for me to actually be serious about what I'm doing, like my clients are, and get a coach?
Yeah, well, the thing was I had been PTing, but when we say PTing, I had been doing group classes, training, mums in Brighton and Hampton. So I hadn't really had much experience with, say, like that top end of strength, where now I've got some really strong guys that I coach. I hadn't had that experience. I had experience coaching people and handling people, but not that sort of experience. So did my first comp. JP Cowkey handled me and Jamie on that day. And then I just was chatting with Jamie and I was like, I wanted to learn my coach ever since. And he exposed me to RPE training. And then just from there, sort of started to dive into breaking down some of the stuff I had learned about linear periodization and incremental load increases each week, and starting to realize that, hang on, maybe that's not the best. It doesn't always plan out that way. So I pretty much just wanted to learn, which is exactly what, say, Didier is doing now at Melbourne Strength Culture. He's just gone and hired Jeff Alberts from 3DMJ, bodybuilding specific coach, because he wants to learn more about bodybuilding and hypertrophy coaching. So I didn't actually know that much looking back now. And I've learned a lot from Bryce, and it was getting a coach really, really helped me with sort of creating my own sort of methods and understanding strength and powerlifting on a deeper level.
Yeah, so he was big in shaping your coaching philosophy.
Definitely.
Yeah, if you were to pitch us your coaching philosophy, we were potential clients. What is your coaching philosophy?
Look, to be honest, the big thing I fall back onto, I don't have a specific phrase or catchphrase laid out, but the big thing I fall back onto now is enjoyment of training, which is something that I think gets lost in the when we, as coaches, we're reading textbooks and this and that and research, and this research says to do this and textbooks say to do that, but you're not really dealing with a robot. You're dealing with a human being. And the biggest thing I found experiencing this lockdown is I've gone back to just making programs enjoyable for my clients. And so I ask for their input massively. And it's also the relationship that I have with Bryce, where we just had a Zoom chat the other night for, on Friday morning for about an hour, because I think enjoyment is a big part of training that often gets lost in the textbooks and in the science of it all. That we are humans, we lift weights, or I lift weights because I enjoy it. Most of my clients do. I'm assuming everyone in here that does some form of training gravitates towards that form of training because they enjoy it. And I think that's what training should be about. Like, we're not, not a lot of us are getting paid big bucks to do this. We're not NBA players or soccer players getting paid millions. So I think we should enjoy what we do. And that's probably what I fall back on to. And that's the exact same reason why Jamie Smith doesn't lift weights anymore, because he doesn't enjoy it. So, yeah. But yeah, that's probably the underlying philosophy of what I'm starting to
and do you think
believe.
this has been able to, I guess, kind of be a checklist for yourself when you're writing programs for your clients, because your training is so heavily based around powerlifting, that you're not just giving a coach's bias and creating everyone as a powerlifter? Like, there is some kind of deviation or the different splits they may do to handle throughout their week. How did you go about, I guess, transitioning from putting your coaching bias in the powerlifting realm onto things to make training, I guess, more enjoyable, as you stated?
So at the end of the day, if they are powerlifting, obviously training has to be somewhat specific to those goals, which is barbell, squat, bench, and dead. If they're not, I've had some recent influences. One being Jamie Buziotis, who has exposed me to a lot of people outside of the powerlifting realm. So like Kyle Dobbs being one of them, Compound Performance, James Serby, who they use, James Serby of Rebel Performance, they use a lot of different loading implements like SSB bars, heel elevates for the heels when you're squatting, trap bars. And they're tools that I've probably gone back to more. And I've even used them with my powerlifters for if they're in, a bit more of a general phase where we're looking to build muscle, work capacity, that kind of stuff. They can be really, really great tools to use. So I've kind of forgotten what the question was. I sort of just went on a rant there. But I guess I've looked for influences outside of powerlifting and tried to learn off them. People who, like Kyle Dobbs is someone who, I think he just trains because he enjoys training. If you look at his Instagram, plays around with a lot of stuff, and it's cool to see. And then you can sort of trial and error, that sort of stuff. But I guess the main thing is athlete input. That always tells you if you're sort of doing the right thing. Communicating with your clients, what, are you enjoying this? What do you want to put in? And then usually I tell my clients, like, tell me what you want. If it goes with what we're trying to achieve, that's where I come in as the objective observer and make the adjustments and tailor their program with the input they've given me to achieve the goals that we've set.
Yeah, and I like that term you use there, objective observer. If people who follow Charlie, he gets on and off on the socials. You can catch him at Quantum Lifting. But if anyone here, and there's some in the room that do know you, you've recently started doing a lot more concurrent training and bike riding. How important do you think it is to provide that variability and that openness of training for your clients that may be just specializing in one specific discipline?
Yeah, I think, as I said before, it comes back down to enjoyment. So a big reason why I took up, or have just started riding the bike, and I wouldn't say it's concurrent training because I'm not really training for performance with cycling. It's more just hop on the bike and go for a spin and get outside. And so one reason was obviously lockdown. It's pretty boring being at home all the time and training in the garage. I'm grateful to have the equipment in the gym, but I guess early on as a coach, you always think, oh, if I hop on a bike, it's just going to impede on my gains. I'm going to, the interference effect, I'm literally going to get weaker by the second. And you start to realize, hang on, the human body is probably a little bit more resilient than that. And, I've been riding once or twice a week for the last 2.5-3 months now. And in that time have progressively gotten stronger, hit some big PRs at the end of my last training block. Squatted 240 for 3 and deadlifted 305, which was for a single, which were both big PRs. So started to realize, hang on, probably, I think we take things literally sometimes. It doesn't just, you hop on a bike and your gains melt away. So that was one reason. The other reason was, to be honest, I was starting to feel a bit fat. Like, not physically, I probably didn't look physically fat, but when you're walking up a hill and you're out of breath for a minute after, and coming from someone who had played Aussie rules footy for 15 years of their life, I was pretty aerobically fit. And the last 3 or 4 years, I haven't really done much of that at all. So again, Jamie Buziotis, it helps when you've got a mate and a co-worker calling you fat to sort of push you along. Hopped on the bike because I thought it would be a good tool, considering it's pretty easy on the joints. There's no ground reaction forces such as running. And so, and plus I enjoy it. It's nice to be, I'm sure you've ridden the bike, Jarrad.
Absolutely,
it's enjoyable.
Yeah.
Living on Beach Road, it's also, just roll out of my driveway virtually. I'm on Beach Road, and I can legally be out of the house without a face mask on and not get in trouble. So that's definitely a benefit right now for being in lockdown. So yeah.
So we've spoken about a few of the things that we need as a, I guess, powerlifting coach, and then for someone who's in charge of getting their clients what they want. But what other strings to your bow do you need as a coach? Because I know that from listening to a lot of your podcasts, which again can catch on Quantum Lifting Podcast, Melbourne Strength Coaches podcast there, you talk a lot about mindset, and you talk, there's a lot more that goes in, and I guess that's where we're going to dive into the topic of the art of coaching. It's a lot more than just standing there counting reps and writing programs.
Yeah, 100%. This is something that Didier spoke about at the Congress last year. How it's more than reps and sets on a piece of paper, because with like Chadbot that's coming, has been out for quite some time. For those who don't know, Chad Wesley Smith's AI programming. There are programs, there's AI that can probably do a better job than a human at some point, because it's just, again, objective. It takes in all the data, makes the correct decision, and gives you, the tailored program for you. Whereas human beings are probably a little bit, there's a few more variables at play. So I guess one of those things was adding in meditation, a few lifestyle habits like that. Meditation. I made a post last week about steps and veggies. Probably two things, again, that I neglected, being someone who got very caught up in that whole, if it fits your macros, I'm lifting heavy weights, so I'm healthy. Well, it's probably a few health markers there that I was probably missing. And one of them was steps. I was actually, when the gym shut and I realized I was indoors all day, I was doing no steps. I was doing 2,000-3,000 a day some days. I'm like, that's pathetic. So walking has become something that I not only do, but I've tried to push on most of my clients. And it's funny that I've given a fair few guys just that little nudge in that direction, and they've all been hitting 7,000, 8,000, 9,000 steps, 10,000 steps a weekly average of that many steps. So that's something that I've implemented, another string or arrow to my bow. And then veggies as well. Just not being if it fits your macros and just slamming donuts and stuff to fit your calories at the end of the day, but actually maybe spreading out some fruit and veggies throughout your diet. So it's the most basic things, but they sometimes get a little bit lost in the, I feel, especially in the powerlifting community. I feel like sometimes there's a lot of powerlifters won't treat themselves as actual athletes, and they do those things that I spoke about. They're very inactive, sedentary lifestyles, and have shit diets. So yeah, there's a couple of things I've implemented heavily in this lockdown with clients, and it's actually, they've been listening and implementing it, so which is really good.
The terminology I hear so often, the low-hanging fruit that you can easily access, get that first, and then start to worry about the bigger things, because
Yeah, exactly.
a lot of things we can be doing immediately that will make big positive changes. Next
Exactly.
question I want to ask you is, what are some key mistakes that you yourself fall into as a coach, or you see coaches fall in the trap of?
Key mistake. Oh, so one, so this is, I wouldn't say this is myself, but coaches that don't train themselves, you know, it just doesn't make sense to me, because in any other sport or any other, you know, I've been playing guitar now for a year. I wouldn't go get a teacher, someone to teach me guitar that isn't a gun on guitar themselves. So like, why would you expect someone to train with you if, you know, you're not training yourself and setting a good example? And also the doing is the learning. You know, most of my learning about programming and how to get people stronger has come from my own failures as a lifter, and learning, maybe that doesn't work, maybe that works better. And then you can empathize better with your clients because you actually have an understanding because you've walked that road yourself. So that would be a big thing that we see time and time again. I know when we had the internship early on, and we had a fair few people applying, that a lot of them just didn't train. Jamie and I would interview them, and they just, like, no training at all. And I was just like, man, that's the first thing you should be doing. Like, pick a program, do it, learn, like, get better at it, and then you can teach someone else how to, like, that's a big flaw that I see. And then also getting too deep into the learning and not actually applying it, which is probably what we're going to talk about. But learning's great, and I love learning, and I continue to learn. I think as a coach, you should always continue to learn, whether it's in the field of strength and conditioning and powerlifting, or strength training, or if it's even outside of those fields. I think it's cool to learn about different topics. I'm currently looking into the stock market and trying to understand different mutual funds and index funds. It's a completely different world that I haven't had much experience with, but it's cool to learn in other fields as well. So learning is a big thing, but some guys get too caught up with learning and forget to actually go and apply it to people and go coach people, because that's also where you're going to realize, hang on, the textbook said this, but then when I actually do it with a human being, I'm getting a completely different result, because this human being didn't sleep last night, they've got fired from their job. So maybe adding 5 kilos for progressive overload isn't the best thing for them right now. Maybe I should look at adjusting their program, cutting a set off, or whatever it may be. So it's just an example that I threw out there, but actually going and applying what you've learned. So that's probably something that we see time and time again at Strength Culture.
That segues really well into my next question, because now you manage people in competition. That's your role as a coach.
Yeah.
How do you adjust for an account for things that when they just totally blow up on game day? Like when it's competition time, how do you manage people's internal pressures and stress that they place on themselves?
Yeah, so that's all the sports psychology kind of stuff. Usually, I will be honest, things tend to go to plan. There was things that we stuffed up early on. There was a few things we stuffed up at competitions. We didn't used to have a comp plan written down, and one comp I stuffed up someone's attempt selections. Again, mistake I made. So I went that week and I made a comp plan. So now every time that we have a comp, we write down people's openers. We then have a projected second attempt and a projected third attempt. Obviously, on competition day, that'll change depending on performance and what happens. They might miss an attempt and we have to adjust, or they might blow an attempt out of the water and it's like, wow, we can go a little bit heavier than what we anticipated. Usually things do seem to go to plan. The thing with powerlifting is it's not... I want to rephrase it.
How do you go about managing people's... Because in powerlifting, especially in all sports, people place massive expectations upon themselves. How do you go about managing people's own expectations when there's other the factors to consider, and they're not always going to see the numbers on the page rising.
Yeah, so it comes down to education, really. You've got to sort of educate the client on what is happening, the processes at play. Let's say in a competition block, there is high amounts of fatigue and that performance might actually dip and get a bit worse before it gets better. But then usually when it does get better, it's damn good and they hit a massive PR. And on competition day, they're like, wow, I should listen and trust you more often. But I've been in that position where you start to doubt your own performance because of fatigue. And so I can understand why people doubt it, but they will build that rapport and that trust with you as they go through the process. And once they sort of start to see that it actually works and they get more experience, they can, trust you a little bit more. On competition day or setting goals, for example, because it is a very objective sport, it's really just about managing expectations. So I'm all for guys setting big goals, but I've also got to sort of balance their expectations about, is that a realistic goal? Some guys just go way too big and you're like, hang on, let's just tone it back a little bit. Unless they're Jason Stupas, who goes too big and then gets it anyway and just proves to us that he's right all the time.
There's one of a kinds out there.
There's always, but he's an outlier. Let's be honest. Jason is a big outlier. And if anyone's seen Jason train, he's an animal. So yeah, I guess it's just about managing their expectations about, because I think goals are big with such an objective sport where it really is just a number increasing, that you do need to set goals because it gives you sort of direction where to go. But at the same time, you do need to manage people's expectations because it's not always going to go exactly to plan. It might exceed our goals, what we said. It might actually be better than what we've anticipated, or it could be potentially a bit lower. So yeah, I hope that answers the question.
And then I'm going to go the last one from me before I throw it out to the rest of the room. What are some other areas of coaching that have, I guess, shaped the way you coach over the last 4 years, especially since you've been with Melbourne Strength Culture and you and Jamie have started that?
So other areas of coaching?
Yeah. I know you're very big on allowing people to go stuff up the first rep. I'm just going to stand here and just
well, so I think this is where learning guitar, I've been playing for a year now. At the start, so I applied the same principles of motor learning and development as you would with someone in the gym. So, you're teaching sagittal plane competency with the rib cage and pelvis, start them on the ground. That's the most basic progression, and then slowly go from half kneeling, split stance, tall kneeling to standing, and get them all the way there. So I applied the same sort of principles with guitar, and it was cool to see the same principles just translate to another area. Because I started to realize, I was like, guitar is literally just strength and motor control of my left hand on the strings, and I've got to learn to move them a bit better. And if someone had me every time, like when I stuffed up something and just kept, no, you've got to do this, you don't sort of, as I said before, the doing is the learning. Like fumbling your way through it is the learning, and your brain kind of gets better at it. And the big part of it is doing the session. So for me, guitar practice, or you've got a new beginner in doing a set of squats, superset with a plank or a 990 hip lift to teach them how to control their rib cage and pelvis. Most of it is just let them go, do that session. They'll stuff up a few times, let them go away. They come back a couple of days later. I've started to dive into a little bit of neuroplasticity and how the sort of the brain functions. And a lot of it's when we sleep. So getting good quality sleep is actually when those neurons start to wire together and actually coordinate movements more effectively and efficiently. So letting them fumble their way through it, going away, the brain does what it does, which is a lot more complex than I can explain right here, right now. And then coming back, and they're probably going to be a little bit better and a little bit better. And that's just each and every time. So I think, there is an element, and early on, I definitely fell into this trap. I think Jamie can say the same thing, that you try to just talk too much and you got to do this, got to do that position. We just let them figure it out. And using loading implements as well to help people, like giving them a box for goblet squats. They've got something to cut their depth, an anterior load, which helps to position the rib cage in a better position without you even having to say or do anything. So doing things like that, and you sort of just develop that over time through trial and error. You start to realize, hang on, I don't actually need to talk as much as what I think I do. And we used to do this drill, which I think Jamie got from the States, where we used to get our interns, and I think Paddy Avis is in here, and he would have done this exercise. I think Dave Dobson would have done it as well, where it's teach someone to do a dead bug without using any words. So you have to purely just show them. And you start to realize that you don't actually have to talk that much to show people how to do exercises and to do movements. And so, yeah, I think that, as I said before, the doing is the learning. Another influence that I had is Greg Lehman, who's actually a physiotherapist from the States. And I went to his course in January in Sydney. And he's big on the biopsychosocial model of pain. So that, you know, he talks about the doing is, in this case, the doing is the fixing. So if you have knee pain while you're squatting, that you probably want some squats in there as your rehab to build up that or decrease that sensitivity of the knee pain. So he's someone else that has had a big influence on how I coach. And I've started to realize that managing pain with guys usually just keep them doing the exercise, just adjust the load. So even if they have to do it at 50%, it builds confidence. We start to get some a decrease in sensitivity of the painful area or the painful symptoms, and then you build up that tolerance by just increasing load again to hopefully what they were doing before they got the injury or the pain, and go from there. Obviously helps having Dan Godiasi, in-house physio, who's also very aligned with those beliefs. And so it makes it a lot easier. But that made it very easy to start managing guys with sort of pain, which does pop up from here and there. So Greg Lehman, I'd check him out if you haven't. He's got some really cool blog articles. Yeah, if you haven't heard of him, he's good. He's really good. So he's had an influence on my coaching over the last year as well.
So I'm going to throw it open to the room if anyone else wants to ask Charlie a question before I jump in with another one. Go for it now.
Don't be scared.
Yeah, I've got one, Charlie. So you've been saying that you've been programming your clients to have more of an enjoyment of training. Have you found that that's helped with their motivation, or have you had to implement other things as well?
Yeah, so I'm not sure. I know you do some power. You've competed before, haven't you? A couple of comps. Yeah. So you'd understand a lot of this stuff. But at the moment, specifically in lockdown, there's a lot of guys struggling with motivation, and I can put myself in that group. So I'm trying to definitely tailor their programs to be more, they can enjoy it more and actually get in the gym. That's the first goal. If we can get them in the gym, then that should hopefully get them going. And I don't know if this is something I got off James Clear, Atomic Habits, but just starting. So stop looking at it as a whole session, and rather looking at it as a whole session, just look at it as I've got to do one set, and going in doing one set. And typically, if you go in and do one set, you're probably just going to continue with the session, because usually getting started is the hardest part. I know that's for me anyway. So that's something I try and sort of educate guys if they're struggling for motivation. I'm like, well, let's not look at it as a whole session. Let's just look at it as one set. So you've got squats first. Cool. Go in, start your warm-ups, do your first set, and then typically you'll want to just keep training. So that's something that I've used before. I've also if guys don't want to train in lockdown, I've been pretty lenient with it, and just sort of giving them sessions off, and that can usually spark some motivation again. However, when the gym is running normally, most guys are pretty motivated to train. There's usually comps coming up, or they enjoy the gym environment. For any of you guys who have actually been to strength culture, the gym environment itself is pretty cool. The music's always going, the coaches are in there, there's other like-minded people, and that can get people going. But obviously with COVID, what we're experiencing now, it's a bit of a different ball game if you are in Melbourne. So that's one strategy that I've used. I got that from James Clear, Atomic Habits. He actually calls it the 2-minute thing, the 2-minute. So if you want to walk, just go out and walk for 2 minutes. And once you get out and walk for 2 minutes, you're probably going to continue walking and end up walking for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes. So I sort of applied that same principle to just do one set.
Easy. Thanks, man.
Oh, good, man.
Hey, Charles. My question is, especially, I think it's a good question for everyone as well.
Oh, Dave.
How do you approach first impressions when you have someone who comes in the gym for like an assessment or for the first time, especially if you want a good client to athlete relationship? How do you set the first impression?
The first impression. Jesus, that's a tough one. I really try and drop all barriers. I don't like to judge people because usually your judgment is typically pretty wrong. I try and, there's certain clients that you thought one thing about them when you first met them and they've turned out to be the complete opposite. So I try not to, judge clients, leave those barriers pretty down and just sort of, to get them in the gym and then go from there, not really try and judge them straight off the bat, which we tend to do as human beings. I think all of us would say we've judged someone at some time. I think that's very rare. But in terms of that, just being friendly, man, like trying to be just be me, trying to be anyone else, just be friendly. Try and talk to them about other things outside of training, what they do for work, their family, that kind of stuff, and build that kind of relationship with them. And then typically they'll start to open up a little bit more from there. Yeah, so that'd be the main things. Other than that, it's not too great, not too much else other than just being myself and trying to be nice.
Yeah, fair. I think it's good that you touched on like other shit apart from powerlifting and just keeping it friendly for sure. Yeah. Try and build
some form of relationship with them. Some people don't want to talk too, and that's something I've also realized. Like, if they don't want to talk, like maybe they're a bit more introverted, they might need a few sessions to start warming up and opening up, and that's okay too. And then I'll just sort of keep it pretty low key. This is what we're doing today, and just show them what we're doing. Or we're going to work on this. We're going to try and implement that, and that's okay too. So not everyone's going to be loud and outspoken straight off the bat.
Can I piggyback on that quickly?
Yeah, go for it.
How many, obviously it's a different situation now, but how often do you and Jamie and Booz and Dids and all that get actual clients that don't know the brand before they come into the gym? Is that a common occurrence now?
Probably not now. Not as much now. Obviously, we haven't had a physical gym open since March. To be honest, I haven't taken an assessment for a long time in person, so I'm kind of a bit rusty and I've forgotten what the hell I even bloody do. But typically now it is people do have some sort of understanding of what we are, what we stand for. Something we're actually trying to improve on is our image away from powerlifting, that we don't just do powerlifters. We push early on. Jamie and I got some marketing advice off a connection of his mum, of Loris, and one of the things was, she's like, you got to put out there what you want to get. So early on we wanted to get people that were really attracted to strength training, because when we opened Strength Culture, we still had a few people that wanted to do like boot camp style training. I want to get sweaty. I want to go for a run. And that's not really the market we were trying to go for when we opened Melbourne Strength Culture. It was in the name. We sort of wanted people that are interested in getting stronger and strength training. So she's like, you got to put out there on social media what you want to get back. So Jamie went really down the rabbit hole of like powerlifters and putting probably out 20% of clients to try and attract that market. And we did. We got that in return. But now we're sort of trying to get away from that. And hang on, we actually have a lot of clients that are just general pop, that just love training. They just want to get stronger. They want to track their calories. They want to build muscle, just because they love training, and they're not training to be powerlifters. And we actually had some feedback recently that people were a little bit intimidated by our gym. You got Dave Dobson coming in and squatting massive weight. And that's all we are, but we're not all that. We've actually got a lot of mums that train there, people of that market as well. And we probably don't do the best job of putting that out there. So that is something that we are trying to improve on.
Okay.
Obviously,
so transition into more of general pop stuff as well? And I know.
Well, we've always had the general pop.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've always had the general pop. It's probably Buzz has had a big influence on that, where he's come out with this. He really just wants to train general pop people that want to train like athletes and be weapons. They're not training for any sport. They're not training. They're just training because they love it. They want to get jacked. They want to get stronger. Pardon me?
Compound and rebel style. Compound performance.
Yeah, exactly. Spot on. Which, so he's had a big influence on that. So by nature, we're sort of, he pushes that a lot through the seminars that we've done on the YouTube channel. I don't know if anyone's seen the recent spike in YouTube content from us. We've really sort of tried to push that. And that's something that we look to do long term. We've got Jamie's brother doing all the editing. So the footage is really like, it looks top notch. So yeah, just by nature, him putting out that content, it'll hopefully bring that back in to the gym when we are actually open, which is hopefully soon at some point.
Yeah.
I've got a small one. It's not really a big question, but yeah, I've been watching your podcast on YouTube, Quantum Lifting, and I've always wondered, like, is there any reason you made the name Quantum Lifting? I've always wondered that.
Yeah, so that's right. I went through this phase probably about 4 years ago, probably when I started powerlifting actually, where I was obsessed with the universe. And I watched Interstellar, and I love Matt McConaughey. Love him as an actor. Loved him in that movie. Loved the concept of that movie. That movie exposed me to a lot of astrophysics, like time dilation stuff. I started watching Neil deGrasse Tyson talk about the movie, how he's like a majority of the actual science in the movie is actually true and correct. I started watching all these documentaries. I started watching this YouTube channel, PBS Space Time, which was real. It's actually really like quite complex. I think you have to have quite a good understanding of like physics to really grasp what they're saying. But it exposed me to some cool concepts like Schrodinger's cat, all this crap. So anyway, I was looking for a new Instagram name, and it was Jamie and I and a couple other people. We'd just been to the Strength Fortress, I think. It was literally the week that it opened, or just before it had opened, and we're having burgers, and I was like, I need a new Instagram name. I need something that's a little bit more catchy and unique. And then we're just throwing out names, and Quantum came up, and I was like, I like that, and it just became Quantum_lifting, and then it just stuck, and I've really liked that name ever since, and haven't changed it. So, and then Jamie's like, we'll call the podcast that. Because it sort of gives it its own unique twist. And yeah, that's pretty much where that came from. I got full down the rabbit hole of the universe and physics, which was, and I've always been interested in science. I did pretty sciencey subjects at school and stuff. So that was where that name came from.
Nice.
Yeah, crazy. I hope that answered that question. But it's good because that's kind of what I want. I want it to be sort of like that. Well, actually, why are you called Quantum Lift? It's sort of got a bit of, why is it that name? So yeah, appreciate that question.
I was just wondering, I've seen you talk a bit about like mindset and kind of self-improvement as well. How much of that do you think translates across to how you coach people?
So Mark Bell says strength is never a weakness, and which I take as anything you improve physically is probably going to translate to, for me, the power lifts in some way, shape or form. If you're playing at sport, it's going to translate. If you've got a stronger squat, it's probably going to translate over to being more resilient and robust on a field-based sport. So I take the same sort of approach with mindset and personal development, is that it's probably never going to be a weakness, and learning implementing meditation and reading on some personal development books and practicing that sort of stuff is going to translate over in some way, shape or form. And it's at some point, it's probably going to help a client. I also think though, as coaches, we sort of have to know where we're still coaches. We're not psychologists. So I do sometimes refer people. I'm like, I think maybe you should see someone. Because there's only so much as a coach that I can do. I think it really just falls back on being friendly, trying to listen, offering an ear. And it's not always about trying to help, but just trying to understand and just listening from that sort of point where it's just, I'm just listening as a friend, as the coach, to understand and hopefully help them. And to be honest, a lot of time when I just call a client, I've had a few in this lockdown where people are struggling and I've spoken to them on the phone, just speaking to them, they're like, I feel way better. And I didn't do anything special. Just got on the phone, had a chat with them for 20, 30 minutes about whatever. So yeah.
Crazy. I think that's a better answer than the question that I asked. So thanks.
Hopefully I'll see. Yeah.
I might jump in with a question.
Yeah,
Charlie.
go for it.
It's nice to meet you. I don't know if it's just because I live in the Southeast, but the Strength Culture brand, I think, is so well known now.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, when you guys were small time and just getting off the ground, I'm wondering if you could nail it down to like 2 or 3 key things that have really helped you promote that brand and your awareness in the area.
Yeah, awesome. Great question. Firstly, I still think we're small time. I went and saw James Smith PT talk. This was just before I think about February, before we went into lockdown, and he goes, "I still feel like an imposter." He's like, "I feel like someone's going to walk in and say, 'Hey, you've had enough time. Like, the show's over.'" And that's how I sort of feel. So when you say like we're big time in the Southeast, I still feel like we're just me and Jamie, just 2 idiots trying to figure out what the hell we're doing. Look, I have to. I'm trying to think now. Put me on a spot. 4 years. When did it all turn? Like, what was 2 to 3 big things that helped us? I think definitely getting some advice on marketing and business. So that was a big. It was clear that Jamie and myself had some experience with training and understanding the human body, but there's a whole other ball game to it. You've got to actually get people in the gym, build a brand, get them to know you, which is 4 years down the track, and it seems like it's starting to actually happen. So we got some advice from, as I said before, one of Jamie's mum's connections. A couple times we met up with her. She was actually the one that pushed me to do the podcast. And for me, that was a really scary and daunting experience. And it's been 2 years. And I could probably say at the start, I didn't put that much effort in the podcast because I was almost scared of failure. Whereas now we've started to branch out and actually get bigger guests in, as we had a chat with Wesley Smith. The other day I recorded one that's coming out this week with a coach from Kentucky in America, which I guess so she pushed us to do that. The YouTube channel, we've only just sort of ramped up again. We went pretty quiet on that. So I feel like if you came and asked me this question in 2 years' time, I'd probably say now, the YouTube channel, actually putting some effort and some content into that, and getting Donnie on board to help with the graphics and make it look all pretty and sexy, because just having good, high quality production, people automatically think you're better than what you are and more interesting than what you are. So, I think that'd be the couple right now. Getting some external advice from someone outside of the strength and conditioning and fitness world. And then, I think that'd be the 2 right now that I think at the top of my head. Other than that, man, it's just doing, like, just get in, do it. And, over time, you just learn and you fine tune your craft.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks.
Yeah. So if you want to coach, just get coaching people. That's offer to coach some of your friends for free. Half of them won't do your program, and you'll put all this effort into writing the program, and some will do it, and then you'll learn that way. So yeah. Awesome.
I got a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Are there any specific, more isolated exercises that you like to combine with the training that you're having success with?
Me personally, so one thing I ran last training block, and so I obviously have a lot of input with my coach Bryce, but I said to him I really wanted to do heels elevated SSB squats. There's something, again, Jamie Buziotis had some influence on me. So we were like, when I mean heels elevated, like heels were chocked up high, knees forward, staying upright. And I was doing 80 kilos, sets of 10, and my quads were on fire. And so that's the whole concept of, if you just, like, muscles are just dumb tissue. They don't actually know what the hell they're doing. They just respond to skeletal position. So if you want to get your quads lit up, you probably need to get forward translation of the knee. So in that same block, I squatted 240 for 3, but 80 kilos, SSB, really making sure I was protracting, getting my rib cage back, so getting some serratus, getting the knees forward, and my quads were on fire. So I started to realize, hang on, if you just put the bones in the right position, and this is that whole like sensory motor thing, just learning to sense and feel positions, you don't actually need to use a lot of external load sometimes. So there's that one. The other one would be a hook lying bench press, which is basically a feet up bench press. But instead of having your shoulders pinned back in retraction and depression, you're actually allowing them to protract, and you're getting some serratus anterior as you reach. Couple that with a forced exhale to get the bucket handle mechanics, where we get the rib cage compressing in. And also while doing that, dragging your heels into the bench. I add a stool to the bench to make it longer. Dragging my heels to get a bilateral hamstring contraction to get some posterior tilt. So they're two that I personally have implemented, and I've given to a few clients. Again, they've been off compound performance. So steering a little bit away from the traditional powerlifting sort of lifts. We use those as sort of movement. If for powerlifting purposes, we use those as more movement variability. So training away from the typical powerlifting movements, because at the end of the day, you're not a powerlifter, you're a human being doing powerlifting. So we need to treat your body as a human being first. And so that means we do need to train those movements that don't get that much love from the 3 powerlifting movements with the barbell. So they're the 2 that I've recently implemented that I've had some benefit with. And yeah, I found personally to have some benefit with, and same with clients. But if you don't follow Kyle Dobbs, yeah, follow him. He's got his Instagram's just full of him training, and he's got all these movements that have influenced me quite heavily in the last sort of year.
Good. I'm going to ask another question. If someone's got another question after me, they can jump in. But Charlie, so I've had the privilege of knowing you quite well, and I've always admired how well balanced your life is. For someone who's in our industry and also someone who trains as much as you do, how you go about maintaining the balance of being a coach slash athlete?
Yeah, well, it's funny how people perceive you, because is this something that I've dived into, is like how you think. Like, I might think of you a certain way, but you in your head are completely different. So yeah, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like a bit of a failure as an athlete, because I'll be honest, my motivation to train half the time isn't there. I don't want to always get in and do it and train. And I think, so how do I keep it balanced? I find it very, for me with training, is setting specific times to train. So my training is I train at this time. And it's the same as when I used to go to footy. Footy training was on Tuesday night and Thursday night at 6 p.m. So you just went. Obviously, you had an external factors like a team and a coach to motivate you to get there. And you also probably wouldn't get selected if you didn't go to training. With an individual sport, it's a little bit harder because you just have to do it. But it's hard to say, because it's just something you just do. You just do it. Like, I've been doing it for that long. You don't really think about it, and you just get in and do it. And I'm not always motivated. I don't always want to get in and do it. But again, it comes back to finding things that you enjoy. So like, I enjoy lifting weights. I enjoy getting stronger. I've got some goals that I've set. Like, I want a total 800 and squat 280 and dead 320. And so those goals keep me on track. I also don't want to let Stupas get stronger than me. That's another one that keeps me on track. So friendly banter. He always tells me he's going to catch my total, which I don't think he will, but you never know. You honestly never know with him. So yeah, I guess finding things. I really liked the competitive side of playing footy. So that for me, I think that's also what helps me with powerlifting is an element of competition. So when I do, there's a few guys that are in the 105 class that I want to beat. And I'm looking forward to doing that when we can actually do it and have nationals. So I do miss, that's something that does drive me, that competitiveness. I also like just being physically strong. I don't know, it's something I just like. As Arnold Schwarzenegger used to say, you can't buy a physique. You have to, work for it. For me, it's not physical physique, but the strength. You can't buy the strength. Like, you've got to just show up. So that sort of drives me as well. But I don't know if I'd say I'm balanced.
What about in terms of your work-life balance? Like, as you said, you try not to throw yourself too much in the deep end of just always being driven by education. Like, you're not out there sitting reading textbooks and studies day to day. And you guys at Melbourne Strength Culture, you work shifts, so all right, it's a structured set hours of when you're going to be coaching and then training as well. But you've got from my perspective, and it's what you said, you've got quite a nice balance where you've got other hobbies, you've got structure in your life. Like, you seem to always be eating well and sleeping well. So what are some key things you've worked out in this work-life balance?
Well, for one, sleep, you touched on it. Sleep is a big motivator for me. I do like to get good night's sleep. I did the whole going out on a Saturday night and going straight to work on a Sunday. I've done that. Did that when I was 20, nearly 28 in December. And so sleep for me is massive because I feel better the next day. I function better the next day. Training is better. My life is better. My mood is better. So that motivates me because it's something I know is good for me. There was just this transition point in my life where I started to realize there was things that you can actually do that make you feel better and you probably get better outcomes. Sleep is one of them. Eating well is one of them. Eating double body weight protein is one of them. Still doesn't make sense to me, the people that love training but won't eat roughly double body weight protein. Like, eat your protein. Like, that's what helps you get better and stronger. And so, I guess finding things that make me feel better. And this is just through trial and error. Like, another thing that has come into my life as of late that's really makes me feel better is reading fiction. For a long time, I thought reading had to be books that are non-fiction. I'm learning. But I've started to realize that fiction, and I've read a fair few fiction books this year because I've had a bit of time. I'm just looking over them. They're sitting over there. And I realized I actually feel better. I was getting better sleep quality. Luke Tulloch was someone who actually sort of pushed me back onto the fiction. Because he was someone else that, I don't know if you guys know Luke Tulloch, but he's super intelligent, dives into research. And he's like, most of my reading that I do is fiction. I get into bed at night and read fiction.
It's funny you say that. I'm just going to jump in quickly.
Go for it.
I listened to something Eric Cressy was talking on a podcast ages ago, and he said he will only ever read things that are related to business and his job. He doesn't touch fiction. I was like, to me, that I don't know about that. That doesn't make sense to me because I like jumping in the world of a totally different part of my life that's not even a part of my life, and just something that may not be true, and just it's a story. I like that
story. Yeah. Well, Jamie did it with he doesn't read, but he listens to audio. But he started listening to Harry Potter on audiobooks, and he's like, I love it. It's like just and it's a good escape. And I've really enjoyed. Like, we do it with movies, we do it with TV shows. Like, we sit there and binge watch TV shows and movies that are just stories, and we do it because it's entertaining. So it's the same thing with reading, but also there's a lot of benefits to just focus, like sitting down and being able to. Something I struggled with was focusing. That's where meditation has had a big impact, and even reading. Sitting down, I set I'm gonna sit down and read for an hour. I couldn't do that 18 months ago, 2 years ago. I couldn't sit down for an hour and read a book. And there's a lot of people that I meet. My brother is one of them. He's like, I can't do it. Just can't sit down. And again, it's like something you build up to. It's like you don't just go for a 10K run or deadlift 300 kilos. Like, you build up to it. But it's something I have worked on, being able to sit there and read. And fiction is a really good way for me to do that. And I like to think of fiction as my GPP. It's like general physical preparedness. Whereas, say, reading a book like The Brain That Changes Itself is one that I just looked over and it's there, which is on neuroplasticity. That would be more SPP. That's a bit more specific to coaching. I'm learning about the brain, how the brain impacts learning and development and stuff. But reading fiction has got me better at the task of reading, because reading is a skill, which then translates to when I am reading a book that is non-fiction. So that helped answer the question. But again, reading isn't for everyone. Jamie Smith hates fucking reading.
Yeah.
I hope I can swear on this, but he hates reading. But he consumes his content through other ways. He always says he's got a YouTube degree. Whereas I personally enjoy reading. It's a parasympathetic activity. Get into bed at night, read my book. It helps wind me down, put me to sleep, and then I probably get a better quality night's sleep, which then inadvertently is going to have me feeling better, and my training's better, and then So
it's like we've got to learn to prioritize ourselves as number one.
Self-love.
Do things for yourself that you can find enjoyment in. Do things for yourself that are going to make you better, because then everyone else is going to reap the rewards around you. And I think, mate, just the hobbies that you've named and some of the things you do externally, reading, meditation, plays the guitar, strong as hell, coach, like you have quite a nice balance of life there, mate. So I think you're going really well. If anyone else wants to ask Charlie one more quick question, feel free to jump in.
It's throwing it back a fair bit to earlier in the conversation, but you said earlier that at Strength Culture you guys have your own little niches. And it's a question that's come up fairly frequently in the coaches corner, but did you deliberately steer did you identify that was a strength of yours and try to develop yourself in that niche, or was that something that you sort of just were good at and fell into and Jamie steered you towards?
Yeah, it sort of just happened because it kind of works well within the dynamics of the business, because we have Jamie who sort of oversees, like Jamie's definitely heading down the mentoring, the business of strength that people have probably seen come out, that sort of educating coaches realm, and that's what he wants his job to become. Whereas me being the competitive powerlifter, it just sort of fits that I coach the other powerlifters, and it sort of just sort of panned out that way. And then Buzz being that hybrid guy, being a competitive boxer, he wants to do triathlons, but he wants to run. He had a goal of running a sub 5 minute 2K and then squatting 500 pounds on the same day. Just do that sort of stuff. So that's where that whole hybrid and just being a weapon of a person. So that's why he attracts that client. It just happened that's what we were, good at. So we went down that route, and it sort of just fits within the dynamics of the business. So we've all sort of got our little niche, and then Didier as well is just sort of does a fair bit of the powerlifting stuff as well, but did sort of just getting experience because he never really had a coaching job or gig before this, but he fit within Melbourne strength culture, and so he just, if there's any clients there, he just takes them and just gets better at coaching, which is what I said before about just doing. The doing is the learning. It wasn't like, I'll be honest, 5 years ago, I barely even knew what powerlifting was. I wanted to be a high school teacher. So I was doing a bachelor. I started doing a bachelor of commerce, majoring in marketing, did that for 18 months, hated it, dropped out, then did exercise, or bachelor of health sciences at Deakin, which, to be honest, doesn't really apply to what I'm doing now. I don't need that degree, but I always had planned to be a teacher. I wanted to be a PE teacher. And so I never really thought I'd be in this position. 5 years ago, I didn't know what powerlifting was. I was still playing footy. I was personal training, but as I said, I was sort of just working with very, very, very general pop clients. And then Jamie also sort of impulsed opened Melbourne Strength Culture. He got back from the United States, had a guy, Iron Edge, bought some equipment. Because originally we were only going to open, we were going to move from the old gym we were at just to get in a factory, get 2 racks and just have a space to start training our clients. Because we were having some conflicts with the some of the old personal trainers that we worked with, where they didn't really like the thing we were pushing about strength and all that stuff. That was very like boot campy sort of stuff. So there was a bit of a conflict of interest. It was becoming a little bit uncomfortable. So we were ready to leave. However, that escalated from just getting a space with a couple of racks to Jamie going, I've bought $20,000 of equipment at Iron Edge and we're going to look at factories. And within 2 weeks, there was a factory with gym equipment in it. So again, it happened very quickly. At this point, I was still had no idea what position we would be in 4 years later. Didn't really know what powerlifting was. I knew Jamie had done a comp or two before. Started doing some at the previous job, I was doing strength training, barbell strength training, deadlifting. I was like, I want to deadlift 200 kilos. So I did that and squatted. I was like, I want to squat 180, 4 plates, and did that. And then you sort of get hooked on it and go, I want to get stronger and stronger. And you see yourself, very early on getting stronger. And then it just happened to fall that way. And then it just worked within the dynamics of the business. So it was a very long-winded answer, but it wasn't something that was ever planned. And I'm going to be honest, even up until recently, there's always doubts of, am I doing the right thing? Or maybe I would like to do a different career or do this. And especially when COVID hit, I was like, is the business is going to fall in on itself? Am I even going to have a job at the end of this? Because it was just so uncertain, and you start thinking about what the hell am I going to do? And I was like, I'm going to get into breeding cavoodles. They sell for $8,000 a pop, and everyone loves cavoodles. So that was like my second job. I was like, oh, that's what I'll do if strength culture goes under. So no, it was never really planned. It sort of just happened. And I guess that's that whole, is it the Bruce Lee, be like water, life, you don't know what is going to happen, and no one expected to be in this position this year. You sort of just have to flow and be like water with what comes up. But obviously you do need to take some action and put yourself out there.
Thanks.
Yeah. I hope that answered your question. It was very long-winded.
You did.
Yeah.
Let me piggyback on the back of that question then, Charles. Do you see, because you have, like myself, you've developed a niche for yourself in coaching and you're very happy with that. Do you see that niche long-term? Do you see being a powerlifting coach as a career?
There's definitely a career there. I definitely want to head a little bit more into the education side of things. Have my 30, 35 clients that I work with, but, and that's where obviously we're this business of strength thing that we're going to, push next year, having some education stuff there. Going to look to dive into that realm and have like a powerlifting mentorship for other powerlifting coaches. So there's definitely a career there to do this long term. Will I do it in 20 years time? I've got no idea. Like who knows? Like really, who knows? But for the immediate future and the next interim, I don't see myself not doing it. I'm in an awesome position. I get to go to work with mates every day. When the gym is open, it's an awesome environment. I love socializing with all our clients, which I've actually really, really missed. And that's probably why I was so depressed after the second lockdown, is because it just got into 2.5 weeks of seeing everyone and being like, this is awesome. I had a spring in my step and we were shut again. So I do love that component. I get to work in a social job, work with mates. And yeah, I definitely do see myself doing this. I definitely think there's a job there. But yeah, as for 20 years down the track, who the bloody hell knows? Like, we might not even make it out of this lockdown. Who knows if the gym even is going to open again?
It's like having multiple streams of income within your career. I think that's what is important to establish once you've kind of got your foot in the door and all right, this coaching thing is for me, but we don't all want to be in the gym 40 hours a week for the next 20 years. So like you've just said there, there's other avenues that you're now exploring. Yeah. Hey, thanks very much for jumping on with us. Appreciate your time as always. If anyone wants to hear more of Charles and what he's up to and some of his guests that he has discussions with, I highly encourage you to go check out Quantum Lifting Podcast. I've been on it once or twice myself, and I enjoy all conversations I have with Charles and seeing what he's up to and the thoughts in his head. So yeah, thanks, mate.
Yeah, done. Awesome. I will just say, if you guys haven't checked out the YouTube channel as of late, we have been pushing some content out there, and we've definitely ramped that up. So if you haven't looked at it, and I would love for you guys to head over there, click subscribe on the YouTube channel if you haven't, and like the videos.
Important button, that subscribe one, mate.
You got to hit it. You got to hit it.
Absolutely.
So yeah, but thanks. Hopefully you got something out of this discussion.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks,
you.
man.